The Seahawks quarterback situation just got very interesting. There's no doubt that Sam Darnold is going to be the guy, at least to start the season. But how long is that actually going to last? Well, his contract says that it might not be too long, and the Seahawks drafting Jalen Milroe in the 3rd round tells us that the Seahawks are already planning for a future post-Darnold. Milroe is a guy who wasn't a top prospect, and for a good reason, but is a guy that has a ton of potential if he develops and can improve his arm. I'd bet that he's going to be a very fun player to watch, but the question is how long it'll take to see him, if ever, on the field. The Seahawks are an interesting situation to say the least, but drafting Milroe tells us 2 things. 1, that Seattle knows just how talented Milroe is and what his potential is, and 2, they don't think that Darnold is going to be the long-term option at quarterback. The Seahawks were a team that made a ton of sense to draft a quarterback, and they did, but not super high. In the 3rd round, they took Jalen Milroe. He was the 4th quarterback off the board after Cam Ward and Jackson Dart went in the 1st round, and then Tyler Shuck went in the 2nd. Milroe is an interesting prospect for sure. He's very physically gifted and a great runner. He has all the tools to be a great mobile quarterback, but the issue is his arm. He needs to improve his passing abilities, but that's why he wasn't a super high pick. If he can develop well and actually be used correctly, the potential's there for him to be successful. There are some slight similarities to Jalen Hurts and how he was viewed at one point, at least when he was at Alabama. He was a 2nd round pick to the Eagles and developed well and is now a Super Bowl MVP. He was super talented, but had a ton of questions about his throwing abilities. But he landed in the right spot and got the right coaches and situation to succeed. Now, I will say Hurts was probably still a much better passer in college, and especially in his last year at Oklahoma, was far more efficient than Milroe ever was at Alabama, but the point stands. And in Milroe's defense, he was also the much better rusher, and honestly one of the best in a while. He only started 2 years at Bama, and he actually passed pretty well in 2023 with 2,800 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions, and he also rushed for 531 yards and 12 touchdowns. Then this past season, he passed for 2,800 yards again, but with 16 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. The difference is that he was way better rushing, with 726 yards and 20 touchdowns. There also was the coaching change to Kalen DeBoer from Nick Saban in between, which probably didn't make things easy on him. Milroe was consistently a great threat in the run game, but he needed to be more consistent in the passing game, and that's what he's going to have to figure out in the pros. The question now is whether or not the Seahawks can actually develop him well and help him succeed. The last time the Seahawks drafted a quarterback in the 1st round, it's safe to say that it went pretty well. That was Russell Wilson in 2012, who made 2 Super Bowls and won one against the Broncos. Now, I'm not saying that Milroe is going to be anywhere near as good as Russ, but the Seahawks have developed a day 2 pick before, and that's where Geno Smith completely revived his career. Geno was traded to the Raiders, where longtime Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll is now the head coach, so that move definitely made a lot of sense, but it left the Seahawks with a hole at quarterback. Well, Seattle then signed Sam Darnold to a 3-year, $100.5 million contract. He's coming off of a career year with the Vikings, where he threw for 4,300 yards, 35 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. It was enough for him to cash in with Seattle, but it's still hard to believe that he's a real long-term option for them, and the deal pretty much confirms that. The Seahawks can get out of the deal after just 1 year and $37.5 million if things go south really fast in year 1. Darnold essentially being a 1-year guaranteed guy tells me exactly what would make a ton of sense. He is just that, a bridge quarterback. So the Seahawks need to already be thinking about the future, and clearly they are by drafting Milroe. Now they can wait and see how Milroe develops. I mean, if Darnold sucks, the Seahawks do also have Drew Lock to play if Milroe isn't ready. He was on the Giants last year, but was on the Seahawks for 2 seasons before after he was involved in the Russell Wilson trade to Denver. It's definitely not a crowded quarterback room, so with 1 injury, Milroe is right on the cusp of starting already. Sam Howell was also there at one point, but once Milroe got drafted, he was sent off and traded to the Vikings. So now Darnold was a 1st rounder with high expectations, and Locke was a 2nd rounder who started pretty early on in his career. So I think those 2 have good experience to help mentor Milroe. He's going to need some serious time to sit and learn, and the Seahawks know that, and luckily, they don't exactly need him to step in right now and win right away. The Seahawks are in this interesting spot, having gone 10-7 last year with 1st-year head coach Mike Macdonald. It was a good year one, especially considering that the Seahawks had gone 9-8 in back-to-back seasons at the end of the Pete Carroll era. The NFC West really does seem like a winnable division for the Seahawks if they can just figure out quarterback and continue to build a good roster, which has definitely been under construction with McDonald in charge. The big name that they took during the NFL draft was definitely Jalen Milroe, but the Seahawks were insanely busy. They had 11 picks at the draft, 1 in the first round, 3 day 2 picks, and 7 picks on day 3. It really is like a complete overhaul of the roster. The offensive line has definitely been an issue, and that was exactly what Seattle addressed in the first round, taking guard Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. He was a first-team FCS All-American last year and won 2 FCS national championships. Not to mention, he also has a pretty incredible mustache, 10 out of 10. Then in the second round, the Seahawks took South Carolina safety Nick Emanwari at 35th overall. He was a guy who was mocked to be a first-rounder in a ton of mock drafts and was pretty good value there. He was only at South Carolina for 3 years and was a first-team All-American last season. Then at 50th overall, Seattle got tight end Elijah Arroyo out of Miami. He was a 4-year guy at Miami and got injured in 2023. He never actually had over 100 receiving yards in a season until last year, where he had 35 catches for 590 yards and 7 touchdowns. Then the Seahawks' last pick before day 3 was, of course, Jalen Milroe. Then Seattle didn't actually have a 4th round pick, but did have 3 picks in the 5th round. They took Notre Dame defensive tackle Riley Mills, Colorado State wide receiver Troy Horton, and Alabama tight end Robbie Oots. Then they only had 1 pick in the 6th round and took another shot on offensive line with Kansas guard Bryce Cabledew. Then in the 7th, Seattle had 3 picks, taking Miami running back Damian Martinez, Iowa offensive tackle Mason Richmond, and UNLV wide receiver Ricky White III. Clearly, it was a very busy draft for the Seahawks, but the roster could definitely use a lot of help in new pieces. The Seattle Seahawks really do look completely different compared to last season in some very important ways. The quarterback position literally has no returners at all, with Sam Darnold starting and Drew Lock back in town, with Jalen Milroe coming in as a rookie. The wide receiver spot is almost an entire overhaul as well, but there's one big returner, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Last year, he had 100 catches and 1,130 yards and 6 touchdowns. He's taken over as a top-tier wide receiver, and that was enough to send DK Metcalf to the Steelers. But the Seahawks did go out and sign some extra help by signing Cooper Kupp, who has lost some form, but should be a good target for Sam Darnold. They also signed Marcus Valdes-Scantling. Then the running back room is headed by Kenneth Walker, and the entire offensive line, except for Gray Zabel, all return the exact same. And as for the defense, it's extremely similar to last year. It's a ton of names that are back and have performed well. Mike Macdonald's expertise is obviously defense too, so I have no doubt that he'll get the best out of his guys. But there is one huge new addition on that side of the ball, DeMarcus Lawrence. After over a decade with the Cowboys, he's finally with a different franchise. The Seahawks signed him to a 3-year, $42 million deal. He started last season with 3 sacks in 4 games, but then suffered a foot injury and missed the rest of the year. But regardless, he's proven just how good he can be when healthy though. He has 61.5 career sacks, and if he's healthy and can return to form, that's a huge get for the Seahawks. It's been a busy free agency, bringing in some big pieces, but with a draft with 11 picks too, a lot of good change is going to be happening in Seattle. And more than anything, if Sam Darnold can play at a high level, or if Jalen Milroe can actually develop into an NFL starting quarterback caliber type of guy, the Seahawks are going to be looking good for the future.